Welcome to MoTorque, the program where we bring you cars, bikes, adventure, classics, motorsport, and indeed whatever wheels that have torque. Here's a quick look at what we have in store for you this week. We take the latest SUV offering from Hyundai for a spin. We step back in time with the Buick Super 8. And we bring you the latest motorsports action from the Carlton Supercross 2013.
Yeah, the first time when you asked if I could be the last chance I have to sanctify, so save the last dance for me, my love, 'cause I see you as an angel freshly falling from the sky.
The Hyundai Motor Company is probably one of the biggest automotive success stories of our times. 10 years ago, the only reason you'd buy a Hyundai is because, well, they were well priced and you couldn't really stretch to anything better. But today, Hyundai's products easily match the competition and even exceed them in some areas while still retaining the value for money aspect. Take our test car, the third generation Santa Fe. The last two were among Hyundai's best-selling models worldwide. So, when they were designing this model, they had to make sure they pulled out all the stops so that it would remain competitive in what was a very tough marketplace while still retaining its lead. Inside the Santa Fe, Hyundai have opted to carry out the same kind of design that you see outside. So there are lots of slashers and swoops and bat wings on the dash, and everything looks very futuristic. But crucially, it all works pretty well. The materials used are not of the highest possible quality, but they're not bad. The dash top is a soft touch plastic, the door panels are made of a harder but still very well textured plastic, and there are even little bits of what looks like fake carbon fiber. It doesn't really convince you that it's the real thing, but it looks quite good nonetheless. As for the driving position of the Santa Fe, thanks to electric seats and a steering wheel with both tilt and telescope, whatever size of driver you are, you can get comfortable pretty quickly. And importantly, you can get a driving position that suits you just right. When you're settled in, the seats are really comfortable, the wheel is good to hold, and you see that the Santa Fe has a lot of kit. The equipment level on this model, the fully loaded example, is pretty high for its class. You get a 6 CD changer, Bluetooth, MP3, heated seats, electric everything else, remote controls on the steering wheel for the stereo, cruise control, and the trip computer. And speaking of the trip computer, it has a lot of features, including fuel consumption, estimated range, and so on. So, to call this vehicle fully loaded is not overstating the case. It even has a fully panoramic sunroof, which is something that you don't get again at this price point very often. The new Santa Fe marks a complete visual departure from the previous generation. Where the earlier model was somewhat bland in its overall styling, the new one is much more distinctive and certainly stands out from the crowd of crossover and mid-sized SUVs. It's based on a concept that Hyundai has rather amusingly named Storm Edge, and it's said to be a look that will be debuting on future Hyundai models as well. Details like the huge and trapezoidal grille establish something of an identity for Hyundai, and this is a pleasing direction for them to be going compared to the blandness that was there before. The key reason a lot of people buy small and mid-sized SUVs is because of the high driving position. A lot of people say that sitting higher up above most other traffic gives them a sense of control over the road, especially when driving in town. So the Santa Fe was designed to appeal to this kind of buyer, and it does. You get a good view over the bonnet, you get big windows and big mirrors so that you can see around you quite clearly. And for something that's quite big, it's very easy to maneuver. This fully loaded version even has a very interesting option called switchable steering, which basically gives you 3 completely different steering modes. Now, say you're in town and maneuvering through a tight space, you press the button on the steering wheel and put it into the mode that's called comfort. That makes the steering almost one finger light, and you can just turn it with complete ease. Perfect for the multi-story car park and double parking outside a supermarket. The normal mode is what you'd use most of the time, because comfort mode really is very, very light and a bit unnerving when you're on the road. But if you're someone who wants a very firm steering and more control over your vehicle, then you have sport mode. Sport mode gives you a pretty firm steering wheel and a much better sense of control. Not that the Santa Fe is a very sporting drive, of course, but it's just about enough to make sure that you don't get bored. Under the bonnet is a 2.4 litre 4-cylinder engine with 190 bhp. It's not a ball of fire, but it'll keep this rather heavy vehicle moving decently enough. The transmission is a 6-speed automatic, no sport mode, but it does have Tiptronic, which responds well enough and gives you a decent sense of control. So the engine is perfectly adequate, and we can say the same about the handling. If you find yourself on a curving road, say going up to Nuerelia or something, the Santa Fe will take it in its stride. It's not an exciting thing to drive, but it's perfectly competent and capable. You're not going to have any scary moments, and you'll get there quickly and safely. Exactly what you need in a family-oriented SUV. So what's the final verdict on the all-new Santa Fe? Well, our petrol engine test car, fully loaded of course, retails at 12.5 million rupees. If you wanted it with a slightly lower level of spec, you'd get it for about 10.5 million. And if you had a permit, the diesel starts at just 5.5 million rupees. Considering the level of equipment, the all-round capability, and the general comfort and interior practicality of the Santa Fe, if you're looking for a family mid-sized SUV and this is your price bracket, this Santa Fe should be near the top of your list.
The 2013 Carlton Supercross was successfully held at the Tisamaharama Superdrome, featuring the usual lineup of motorsport events. The track was reversed for this year, running anti-clockwise to provide an extra element of excitement and intrigue for both spectators and competitors. The first car event of the day was the SLN up to 1000cc, which featured the usual fleet of Nissan Marchers, all vying for the lead. One of the favourites for the race, Michael Vijayasuriya, was struck with a mechanical problem on the first lap, dropping him to last place. At the head of the pack, the race boiled down to a thrilling fight between Ushan De Silva and Rohit Rajapaksa. It was Rohit who eventually came out on top, with Ushan finishing a close second, with the young Kushan Piris completing the podium. The SLGT class was, as always, the one to watch, with the fastest and most powerful all-wheel drive machines in action for the first time on a gravel circuit this year. As is always the case with this track, dust proved a major problem yet again. This really is all the drivers can see, which inevitably caused some dangerous incidents. Clearly this track is definitely not for the faint at heart. Pasundu had already managed to make up several positions before he was sandwiched between Missaka Navin and Rohita Rajapaksa, which put an end to his drive after less than half a lap of racing, who after a period of suspension was back in action, with names such as Aravinda Premadasa, Janaka Dias, Ishraq Wahab, Dilan Seniratne and Dinesh Jayawardene all occupying top spots on the grid. Meanwhile, the leader, Aravinda Premadasa, suffered mechanical trouble and ground to a halt, enabling Janaka Dias to inherit the lead. Ishraq Wahab managed to pick up the second spot, and in third position was Dinesh Jayawardene, who had a thrilling fight with Dilan Seniratne for third place, making it a Subaru 1-2-3 for the first time in at least recent history. The SLH category saw Janaka Dias take yet another early lead, with Dilan Seniratne posing an early challenge. Unfortunately, it wasn't sustained, with Dilan rolling the car. Upul Vansera then managed to take a deserved second place, with Lakmal Vijayratne coming in third. The SLS race featured modified cars with much less restrictions, up to 1500cc. By then, crowd control had become a little lax, as seen here. The race was won by Nadira Jinasena, followed by Shanta Suravira and Irfan Fuad. And finally, in the truck and jeep event, Ishraq Wahab was able to clinch victory with his Mitsubishi Pajero Evolution, with Duminder Jayasinghe pursuing in his Land Rover. In third place was Ravi Mayadun. This was another memorable event as these jeeps thundered around the track and proving that even the most unlikely of machines can be built for speed. And that's all the action from the Carlton Supercross 2013.
Our featured classic today is from the era of Humphrey Bogart, Bing Crosby and the Diary of Anne Frank. Cars just like it were used by both bankers and mob bosses in their time, and if you owned one, everyone knew that you had arrived. So join us as we go for a cruise in this stunning 1947 Buick Super 8. The Series 50 Super was Buick's most successful model in the 1940s, combining as it did the large and comfortable body of the top-line Roadmaster with the more economical power plant of the smaller Series 40 Special. This proved to be a winning formula with buyers in the years that followed the Second World War, and the Super enjoyed significant sales success throughout that decade. Of course, economical was a relative term, since even this downsized engine is a 4.1-litre straight 8. Remember, this was a time when the average Austin or Morris family saloon was quite happy with his little 1.5-litre 4-pot, so you really would have to be American to demand something more. For the rest of us though, this engine is more than sufficient. Although its power output numbers are not very high, it compensates with a solid wall of torque almost from idle, exactly what you need to make smooth and brisk progress. Although this car is now just 4 years short of its 70th birthday, it can still get up to speeds that can surprise many moderns, accelerating past 100 km an hour with effortless ease. Of course, stopping is an entirely different matter since its 2-ton weight completely overpowers the 12-inch drums fitted to all corners. So it's definitely better to stick to a sensible pace and just enjoy the experience. Buicks like this in the 1940s were almost at the very top of General Motors' range. They were just one step below the Cadillacs of the time, and as such they were bought by people who were really well off. You have your lawyers, your doctors, bankers, even some politicians. But this kind of Buick was also popular with a certain other kind of element, a certain element of the population that, let's say, Buick wouldn't use in their advertising. I'm talking about the mafia. Mafia chieftains loved huge cars like this, and more often than not they'd be painted black and look menacing, just like this one. So when you're sitting back here, you really do feel like you're a gangster from the 1940s. All I'm really missing now is a nice fedora hat and a big cigar. They've even laid out a cigarette lighter and an ashtray for me. So sitting back here makes you really go back to the 40s and makes you feel like you're in an entirely different era. That's something you really don't get every day. Even today in 2013, which is 70 years after this car was built, there's a sense of occasion in here that you do not get from anything. Not even the latest Mercedes S-Class has this much space. I have over a foot between my knee and the seat in front, and across on this huge sofa of a seat, you can easily fit 3 people, other than me. So there's more space than anyone could possibly use, and it's just the ultimate in comfort. Our feature car belongs to American car enthusiast and collector Mr. Dinesh Hensman, who purchased it as a non-runner in 2009. According to his research into its history, this car was first owned by a Mr. Stanislas Alles, who was Chief Justice of Ceylon at that time. Following Mr. Alles's ownership, the car went to Union Chemists, and after a period of use with them, it was taken off the road approximately 30 years ago. There it remained until Dinesh bought it. And naturally, after such a long period of inactivity, the car was in poor shape. And he tells us that he had to import many of the chrome trim parts and do a large amount of rust repair to get the car into the shape that it is in today. Amazingly though, the engine started up almost immediately after being fitted with a battery and being given fresh fluids, and continues to run to this day without being taken apart, which is a true testament to the quality and attention to detail that was put into making these fine machines. Car enthusiasts are always on the lookout for ways to improve their vehicle's performance. Whether it's by adding new parts or tuning them up, we're always looking for that little extra bit of speed to improve our driving enjoyment. Now, something that we don't think of most of the time is the quality of the fuel that we get. It's a known fact that fuel in Sri Lanka is not the best that it could be. So, Worth say that they have a solution that can increase the quality of the fuel that you pump into your tank and therefore increase the performance of your car. Suranga is here to explain to us this new product.
So, like you said, Sajeeva, always when you have a problem like that, you have to put an additive. So, if you take additives, there are so many additives, fuel additives and oil additives. Right. So under fuel additives, there are two products called
Octane.
C10 booster and octane booster.
Depending on petrol and diesel.
Yes,
right.
C10 booster for diesel vehicles and octane booster for petrol vehicles.
So what does, by adding this to your tank, what do you get out of it? What benefits can you derive from adding octane and C10 booster?
There are some people, they always expect to have more power in their engines. So they need more high quality fuel. So what they do is they always tend to get 95 octane or super diesel. So for that kind of situation, we can recommend these two products. This increased 2 to 5 points the level of C10 and octane. Okay. You have to add this to your tank and make sure to pump 50 to 60 liters. And also, if you want to continue this, you have to put another can when you refuel it.
So basically, every tank full, if you want to get the full benefit, you have to keep adding. I see. And where can you purchase this generally?
Actually, you can go to Auto Mirage centers and care points and lab service stations, and also Dr. Auto, all other top leading car agents, and other automotive vehicle garages, and
all leading service providers.
Yes.
So there you go. If you're looking for the ultimate boost to performance, you should maybe look at adding some octane booster to your vehicle and improving the quality of your fuel. And that's our Worth top tip for this week.